SheerLee here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Soul Hour. And the midheaven is conjoining the Sun at 24 degrees Sagittarius, and the Sun 25 degrees squaring Saturn in Pisces. So this is a time to stop and think about the journey of the Sun through Mula Nakshatra and the square to Saturn, because Mula Nakshatra, I think, because of the energy harvesting that's happening, is seen or portrayed as millionaires, billionaires, but also misfortune. However, Jupiter is the sign of growth and benevolence. Sun in Mula Nakshatra calls us to stop and appreciate the transmutation or the megalithic transmutation in this reason, in this season, and in this region of the sky, and that is the galactic center. In the those that have midheaven galactic center, those that have placements in the galactic center, there is something that permeates any type of superficiality. It requires us to really go to the core issue, and from there transmute. So we had Mars going through this nakshatra, and now the Sun. But then there is this square to Saturn. And Saturn poses a reality check and a crisis of growth to this expansion. The Sun can be our happiness, our authentic self, the confidence that we radiate, our leadership abilities. And here we have Saturn posing a crisis of growth. Because Mula Nakshatra, while being incredibly challenging, has to do with benevolence. It's still a Jupiter sign. And it has to do with tremendous transmutation that goes to the core, or to the root of the issue. Now, so does Pisces. Saturn is asking us, one of the things, I'll begin with the themes that I see arising as this square happens. One, the benevolence of leaders. So, Sun is leadership, and in Mula Nakshatra, it is about something that is very big. This is a type of leadership that has resources. And Saturn asks, okay, what do we do? And how do we got to this point? When Mars was here, one of the things I saw was the reality check on even billionaires that are traditional. Okay? I'm not talking Donald Trump. Warren Buffett. That name came about a lot. I haven't checked again the natal chart. And the concept of nobility obliges. While it is an old concept of benevolence, it's also begging the question, is the charity given happening towards people that have been deprived of resources, and then the superficial standard of benevolence, which is basically the necessary to keep people from completely going guillotine. And by the way, I did see a lot of the guillotine earrings making a comeback with the passage through. I don't know if it's this nakshatra or more the Saturn is ruling over Pluto and squaring. Now with the Sun, I see it is a reality check on the benevolence of leader. Saturn is checking the ego of the Sun. Now, the Sun has the argument of to be who you are. And Saturn has the argument of, wait a second. And Saturn also rules. So, now some rules are really superficial. And some things that are absolutely necessary to maintain healthy, happy life are not even illegal. To violate these rules is not even illegal. Okay? And that was one thing that I saw. So one of the things that people want when they finally get to a point where they get to shine or they get to radiant is to be able to break the rules. Now, depending on what cultural setting is that coming from. And then the question is, well, first of all, if rules are meant to be broken, then why some and not others? And secondly, what rules are there that are meant to be broken? And what rules actually do need to be enforced so that we can be who we are? Okay? Saturn is rules, is regulations, is rules. And although it's also ruler of Aquarius, it's not a natural thing. One of the funny situations, I was going to a cafe, and on the way, I saw dandelion. And I picked up the flowers. And I was thinking about the concept of, well, some people don't like to obey the rules. And then there is this person that picks the dandelions on the way to have hot water in the cafe. That's almost the answer to that. It was not happening on purpose. It was not a rebellion. It was so that's something that happened. And Venus is applying to square this Saturn. So Venus is flowers. In Jupiter is the color yellow. So Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and dandelion. And Saturn in Pisces could be the medicinal properties of something. And also the type of what would grow by the side of the road, or the weeds. Okay, because Saturn rules agriculture. What grows unregulated. Now, another theme that came about was the certain people, as they begin to rise into power, they had a dream of being, they have a power trip around that. And again, usually those dreams happen after a lot of disempowerment and, eating apples and potatoes. But the breakthrough, and this is again with the regulation of Saturn as well, the breakthrough usually doesn't come because of the eating potatoes and then they're forced to contend with that while they may be in certain position of power, it's not that people are going to, if it was reached in those ways, it's not that people are just going to, how should I say that? they gotta get used to not being liked by the people that they actually do count their opinion. And this can happen especially to either younger people or people that are father figures, and then it could come from the children. And their dream that they would be able to have this dominion, they find themselves either abandoned or downright, how should I say that? They bump into a wall, let's just say. Okay, and they have to face the fact that if the other person is helpless in enforcing the boundaries, then it means that the other one will wait for their death. Saturn also rules death. Now, alternatively, it can be a crisis of growth. If somebody imagined themselves being in power position or being connected or whatnot, and that they imagine that as having power and dominion, they find out that both when they didn't have that much and when they do have that much, people treat them the same. But for the good and the bad around this. Because they thought that people are going to suddenly treat them with flattery and again, it doesn't mean that there wouldn't be such people, but they have to position themselves around those people and not those people. And internally, it can be a crisis. Sun also has to do with respect. Okay, both the toxic and the benevolent aspects of respect. What I mean, the toxic? The toxic is when somebody wants to be respected and appreciated, but they look at things superficially. Or they want to be respected and appreciated in a particular way, and they either don't place themselves or for some reasons not able to place themselves in a place where people actually are compatible with that. Because it is Mula Nakshatra, it it squares with the world degree. And the fact is that Mula Nakshatra is, yes, it's a teacher of teachers Nakshatra. It's a leader of leader, teacher of teachers. And that can be challenging because we have to take into account the various situations and cultures and many places that people come from. But the benefit is that it can absolutely yield something that, regardless of culture, is relevant. When I talk about sexual sovereignty, okay, it doesn't matter. If a person's not educated, it's just going to affect their life and they wouldn't know why. It's like before we studied, I don't know, when the people who would operate the dead would be operating the pregnant women, many deaths of children because of the different bacteria. If we didn't have it in our culture, then we're just not aware, but children were still dying. Same with sexual sovereignty. And this is one of the things that in Mula Nakshatra we are exposed to. There's this role of contact that to violate that is already harming. So Sun is also about visibility, and Saturn in Pisces poses a challenge that's coming from the invisible. And so now let's talk about the good things about this crisis. There are certain people that thought, oh, if I'm going to have power, going to have money, if I had power and money, they would be flattering me. And they find out as they have resources or as they come to position of power, that the same person that knew them before that and treated them with respect, but not flattery, treats them the same. They hold them accountable still. And that can be a positive thing. Again, depending on their spirit. If they're completely unable to accept this, then maybe it's the time to, I don't know, take a break from the people that would still hold them accountable. Okay, and have their and have it not affecting the people that would still hold them accountable. Okay, if there are people that don't mind and would just treat them with flattery and don't mind them breaking these particular rules, whether in energy or not, then they can be around these people. So the crisis of growth here is that, hey, people still hold accountable. This is why this aspect, although very annoying aspect, can be beneficial. And this is because it can keep one, how should I say it, Saturn keeps one in reality check. It can keep one remembering. It's not a pleasant one, and we have to remember sometimes the sun has something to say and is right. And sometimes the Saturn has something to say and the Saturn's right. It's just that this aspect can come off as the sun is happy, shiny, radiant, and then somebody arises and it's kind of like, what do you do picking up the dandelions from? You were not asking that when you were. Which rule is more important not to violate? It can also be that one is with the sun. And again, Mula Nakshatra is not necessarily about rising into power in the way that, let's say, Leo is. It still has benevolence. It's not about. Okay. But Saturn can bring some facets that are not so visible. Another thing is that somebody, because it is the sun, there's an aspect of visibility. But Saturn can actually tend to the invisible. Saturn is the sign of preparing for.
Você não é com seu pai para junto, para mim não, engraçado. Para mim não, se vier aqui só para você quebrar presente, eu faço tudo mesmo, né?
I had a dream, saw people, it was a Dutch music show, and the people were in gold, and there was a guy with black curls, and he was saying something Horan, Horan, and I didn't know what it was. Then I saw like to untangle the hair, kind of like a sedna thingy. Now I have no idea where it came from. But if you think about them wearing gold, gold is the color of the sun. And the black curls would have been Saturn. Saturn rules hair. And so, and this was a music show. I don't know, I didn't recognize the artists or anything like that. Um, and then I woke up and my hair was all tangled and I had to brush it, which was weird. So that's something that came up. Um, and yeah, and then there was somebody recoiling from that show. But this is um, yeah, this is something that came up today. I don't know why. However, some positive things with this transit. Saturn delays. Saturn can diminish damages to the heart, to the visibility. Um, and because the sun in Mula Nakshatra, it's the nakshatra of the all-seeing eye. So the sun here, how should I say that? The things that may come from both the invisibility or the gnosis that comes with this nakshatra and from Saturn in Pisces can definitely remediate, particularly Neptune, that can remediate a lot of the harshness with this aspect. Um, yes, it is soul hour. There can be a restriction that is as a result of health or either to support health or as a result of health. That can also arrive at this time. Saturn in Pisces can be also about something going missing or missing. Or people having to change their journey, Jupiter, for safety regulations. And that can be, for some people, it can mean, oh, they thought that if they are going to rise into position, and again, it's not so much about climbing up the ladder with Mula Nakshatra, it's more about, it really is, it's a wealth nakshatra with the good and the challenging around that. And the people thought, oh, if I had private jet, if I had this, if I had that, that we're going nowhere. No, not necessarily. This time, you can have the plane stays grounded because of either weather conditions or security threats, and that's something that people don't always think about or take into account. It can also mean, I remember when I was flying to Amsterdam, it was during COVID, but the affordability of the tickets, I would never be able to afford ticket for a Christmas in in Europe. Okay, Definitely not for company El Al, which is local company but quite expensive one. And the fact that the plane was nearly empty, which means better for people that deal with trauma. The fact that the circumstances of the flight, that they were bringing in, the Saturn was in my 12th house and so on. But now we can have such situation where it might be imperative to travel, or because of certain regulations and restrictions, certain people travel that weren't traveling before. Sun is co-present with Venus. Okay, Venus emphasizes relations, and particularly the relation aspect amongst where big wealth is. Okay, it can give with Saturn a reality check. Um, on how connections are formed or what values and so on. But the square to Saturn, I predict to be interesting. I already see the square forming in the sense of anybody that has Saturn Venus card aspects in natal chart or in synastries, those topics come about. And it can be when one person, either as they grow, they care more about, I don't know, etiquette or code of conduct, and another is reminding them that those things pertain to the bedroom, that pertain to energy boundaries and so on and so forth. Okay, Saturn again is coming from the invisible. Venus wants freedom. So the love language, or what is freedom to one, and this can go really all the way to what Annika Lucas was talking about, where with the very wealthy people would be, I'm sorry, raping children. They would need their child self to be accepted by the child that is tortured and trafficked. And of course, because of the things that were not there, that were missing in terms of relation, love, and so on, acceptance, value, Venus's value, then those could really be intricate dynamics. Okay, it's not redundant. So the square with Saturn can be this crisis of intricacy. And now people are talking about matchmaking right as I speak, right as I record. So with Venus and Sun, I believe that we are going to have some very, very powerful relationship having a growth crisis. Okay, it can be the millionaire and his spouse. I began to see the baronets of the Gilded Age. There are historical films about the baronets of the Gilded Age. I think today I had an argument about this topic of sensuality. It's like, there's all these things. It's Venus, Saturn, and also Venus square Neptune. With Neptune, it might even leak. So people that have Pisces 10th house, or even Sagittarius 10th house, it might be that some argument leaks. It's going to be quite juicy argument. So it can be even a woman baronet that is either put to scrutiny or being criticized, or that she criticizes, or there's some relation between people that are of the big wealth. Now, again, with Venus in Sagittarius, we want freedom. With Venus in Mula Nakshatra, we are aware that we can have the good life because it's in our energy. We are both aware that we don't need to harvest energy for that, and that our wealth is in our energy. And it was only when that energy was harvested that we weren't accessing our wealth. There is something about Jupiter and Saturn where we have to ask for a bigger thing. And that bigger thing might not be in terms of mansions and, fancy things, but it might be, oh, wait a second. We actually have to be able to access the natural weeds that grow on the land, which means that the air has to be clean. And it's not an either or. We can both pick the dandelions on the way to the cafe and order the specialité of the restaurant. And there shouldn't be a reason for anyone to not be able to do so. Energetically, spiritually, fiscally, economically. The only reason is because the economy is not economizing, and because people have trauma because of practices that need to be transmuted, like the old Sinai. It's also a crisis of benevolence. Venus is value, and we can ask, where have we been invested? Or in what have we been invested growing? And Saturn can give us a reality check. Have we been invested growing a garden with the most delicate fruits and vegetables that has its own merit, but forgetting the natural weeds that actually make sure that the soil is nourished enough to grow something? Have we been too invested in learning the correct etiquette that we've forgotten what to actually ask for in a business deal? It's also Saturn. Now here is also where the Sun and Venus do have something new to talk about. Okay. Sun reminds us that to be freely who we are is kind of important. Saturn can be the old ways. Venus reminds us that a part of being free is to be able to enjoy. And in the old Gilded Age, the women weren't exactly able to enjoy. So we need to learn from the past, both the mistakes and the good things, but also we're not doing the exact same thing because there's a crisis of growth. Now, Venus is not perfected its square yet, so we are still evaluating what stands the test of time in regarding to our beliefs, our values, freedom. For example, I remember when I talked about the 15-minute city, I saw a model of that in Tel Aviv, and I'm like, people cannot even, if they walk the dog, they cannot even cross the street because they make the construction in a way that limits their ability to, for no reason. It's something that seemed completely irrational. And I'm like, wait a second, in those particular buildings, who are the people living there? And I was thinking about the lack of freedom of movement and freedom from visibility that actually the elite is experiencing. By the way, people talk, oh, they go to Epstein Island. It's all cameras, it's all for extortion and all drugs, um, which is also another problem, which is, hey, we want to be able to tap into our wealth without all these extortion codes and drugs, and at the same time we need to be aware of, let's say, whether it's kidnapping or the things that are affecting people that say, oh, if I live in a better neighborhood, well, if you had this type of decision making, then you would also be a target. But also at the same time saying, okay, I need to be both aware of the fact that those things or those rights and so on are sometimes a person being kidnapped, tortured, drugged, and okay, particularly when they don't want to participate in those things. And at the same time, don't want to be a part of those type of practices, whether it's living in lower status or living in bigger wealth. There's just something that has been, with Saturn ruling over Pluto, there's something limiting about Mula Nakshatra that has to do with extortion cults. And the people that were buying the story or the social engineering for the elite, that here is where they can get away with, which is of course a lie, because then they would be extorted, exposed, and so on. But the people that did not come from those societies, or even some people that came from those societies and want to change things, then there is, there's a problem, there's an issue about that type of environment. Both when it's people and when it's people of higher rank, so to speak. If the way of the people of higher rank to be favored upon the people was to allow also the people to get away with, as long as they run extortion cults, then we see how that becomes, that it has implications both on the elite and on those people um, and the people that don't see that it has implications yet simply are not assessing the situation correctly. Because what they're being told is not what will be. Those are treason cults. How do we see Gen Zers dropping government after government after government after government? Now, Saturn is structure and Sun is rising, okay? It is to rise. The Sun rises and downs every day. But, this is where it's coming from. The Sun rises, and when we learn mathematics and we learn about inductive reasoning, then we learn about the Sun rising every day. So except for eclipses, we expect for the Sun to rise. Also in eclipses, the Sun rises, it's just that there is an anomaly in the visibility of the Sun. Saturn has a slower cycle. And Saturn-Sun aspects, both the harmonious and not, are the aspect where that Sun doesn't rise today the way that it was rising every day, for the good and the bad aspects of it. That's the meaning of the aspects of Sun and Saturn. The Sun rises every day, and then comes Saturn. Norwegian, for example, I woke up today, Norwegian, in praxis, did a trick on people that have investment passport. None of my concern. Okay? Go to Svalbard. Or don't, I don't know. But this is a good example because Sagittarius is about traveling. Saturn is documents or passports. You want to hear a real joke? In Israel, they began to have this idea where they take a photo of the face so that they can do face recognition. And now there was this influenza shots. They say, oh, please, people, we recommend you to wear masks and take influenza shots. Already people started dying from these shots. But you see, what's the point of making face recognition? But everybody wears masks. So this is a good example of but you see, with this story about Norwegian, Norwegian said that it's not a problem, but if people weren't present in the documentation, then it's a problem. And this is where traveling business people that have investment passport, the sun shines every day. You know, Norwegian, Argentina. And then, oops, gesloten, it's closed. And then people couldn't have good service at the airports. So this is how Saturn shows us a bit of the green reality, even where people thought that they could evade it by having an investment. So some people would say, oh, finally they feel that way too. And for some people, it might mean that they were eating apples and potatoes, and and then they did something really crooked, and then they got to be investment passport, and then the gate is closed also. It's like until they agree to internalize that the world is such, now the world is changing, and they're already yeah, they already crossed that threshold. Okay, and they usually catch people in one megalithic crisis. But this crisis can also be a point where, if they agree to drop their apples and potatoes and give up absorption of minerals entirely for doing things that would cause them to give up absorption of minerals unless they stop that type of abuse and energy harvesting. It can be a growth crisis where they can say, oh, fuck it. I don't do this type of devil dealing anymore. Hopefully, for others, it can mean that they have to travel, and because of the regulations on those that are of Mula Nakshatra, they can actually have, a lot of people are even said if they drive, let's say, if they fly, let's say, economy, they say, okay, if we're missing a person to watch the window in the business class. Or would you like to upgrade to business class? It's free because not enough people in the business class, and it looks bad, of course, if not enough people in the business class. So some people get those type of benefits where the upward mobility previously was not available for them. Saturn Venus with the Sun, because they're going to conjunct. Whenever Venus is in combination of something to do with Leo, what do we have? A me too. And this one is expected with Mula Nakshatra to be a big deal. I don't know. But that's something, yes, to keep in mind. The Sun will square Neptune from 29th degree, still Mula Nakshatra, and so will Venus. And the square to Neptune, it can be ideation and evaluation, but also everything moves to Capricorn. With Capricorn is implications. If I think about implications with Mars, things that I saw as implications when Mars ingressed to Capricorn. Well, certain people took actions in the past that they find it difficult to. Okay, what's ruling over Saturn is Jupiter in conjoining Procyon. They find it difficult to reconcile the actions they took in the past. If they did a power trip, it's not reconciled, and these actions are gonna have long-term implications. Okay, what I saw is the difficulty to recover from trauma, not just sexual, and how much time Saturn, resources Saturn, and real estate it requires. Okay, because people will not have the ability to work and so on and so forth. And so even people that, let's say, they did something and even they want to remediate or correct or this or that, or correct the implications it has over their life, so to speak, they find out that no, the person that was hurt by them takes time. Now they don't trust. Imagine, people don't trust the entire housing sector. The entire housing sector. They don't trust the entire working sector. They don't trust the entire medical sector. That's implications. But somebody say, oh, okay, then, I don't know. Let's say somebody say, oh, well, maybe they can have that apartment. Well, that place needs to be safe. That place needs to be on a gas. Okay, but I mean the gas that's falling from the sky and destroying the crops. Energy sovereign. That place needs to be a place where it's safe in spirit and in matter. Okay, this is why I said with Capricorn it's implications, 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 implications. And that creates a restriction over this area with the end of Sagittarius and Capricorn. Now this restriction is delays, a growth crisis. And this is where people are almost forced to ask what would really be important, because Saturn is kind of like the dead. What's the deal breaker? And they understand that if they don't ask for more for themselves, they will not. I gave the example of a homeless that people say, oh, let me help you find a job. Well, if the entire working sector is energy harvesting, disability causing, it's not, they will work 1 day, 2 days, then again break down, then what will be? Then people say, oh, they don't accept help. Doesn't work, doesn't, and then those people would lose their housing, their RVs, and so on and so forth, because they thought that one small fix will help for the entire sector that was so harmed that they lost the trust in everything, rightfully so, because of those things not reliable. So definitely with Mars I saw that an action that was taken in the past has long-term implications. Nobody can claim transgressing when they have been ritually abusing their tenets. And if they will claim too much, they will be sent by the same peers that are then with the treason cult, the type of tenets that would be tortured and then leave a big mess, and then they will have to sell the place and they will no longer be the realtors of this zone. And they wouldn't be able to complain to those people, because of those people, what happened? They were tortured. The invisible becomes visible. That which is missing becomes. We had the case for Heinut. It was a kidnapped child. The kidnapper was missing from the camera, from the security camera when she was supposed to go out. Then they kidnapped another friend of hers, this time in the south, and only then it was declared the kidnapping. Up until then she was missing. So all the cameras that are also doing targeting and ritual rape of people, of civilians, will have to be taken down one way or another, by strike, by rebellion, or by missiles. Now those that are invested in those things either would lose their investment or would lose completely their lives. Because those that are invested in targeting individuals would lose their life completely. So this is Mars going into Capricorn. Okay, Mars is exalted in Capricorn. It takes actions that do stand the test of time. Both, and here is also the beneficial thing, because at this time people may take the actions that do stand the test of time. For example, harvesting the herbs that grow naturally and are way more nutrient than the lost nutrients in the soil, can first make place to, yes, buy at the local markets from the farmers that have zero rate policy, if there are such, and yes, support the people that grow the food that's not just growing there, and diversify our nutrition in a healthy fashion, okay, that grow the more delicate things, the lycopene in the tomatoes. And the lycopene in the tomatoes is only there where people grow it by local farming, not with all the pesticides and stuff. So those are actions that can stand the test of time. Also understanding how the soil grows. And sometimes if the soil is really unnourished, then letting the weeds grow would sometimes necessitate a soil that is more nourished in the meantime. Sometimes it's natural where people are on a certain land and then the soil grows with them. And sometimes there are time discrepancies. So this is something that needs to be taken into account, because that would dictate more than anything the nervous system stability, the ability to ground oneself with something as simple as stepping on soil. And that prevents, okay, all types of behavioral problems that we get in a 15-minute city. And I need to give credit here for a couple of people that mentioned that. I don't know which one talked about the behavioral problems with 15-minute cities. It was mentioned in Utrecht, but I would need to write me in the comments and I will look and credit her. Or if you are listening and it was you, please write me in the comments so I can credit you. And that is important, because indeed these type of structures do cause behavioral problems. It's true. So those are the things I see with Mars. It's not only bad implications, also good implications. If I saw that, let's say, the dream of growing a garden was depriving me of thinking a different